The moment the entire restaurant went quiet did not come with a shout or a slap or a glass shattering to the floor. It came with a calm voice, steady and unshaking, cutting through laughter and clinking cutlery like a blade wrapped in silk. In that instant, a single father stood beside a trembling child, and across the table, a billionaire heiress froze mid-breath, her perfect world cracking open without warning. No one yet understood that this was the beginning of a reckoning years in the making, one born of silence, abandonment, and the quiet strength of a man who had learned how to survive without being seen. Before the story goes any further, take a moment to pause. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet power of doing the right thing even when no one is watching, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. The single dad had not planned to be there. Restaurants like this one were not built for men like him, with their soft lighting, polished marble floors, and menus that did not bother listing prices. He had only come because his daughter's school art exhibition was being hosted in the private hall upstairs, sponsored by a foundation whose name he barely recognized. He wore his cleanest jacket, the one with the frayed cuff he kept hidden by folding his arms, and he held his daughter's small hand as if the world might pull her away if he loosened his grip. She was 7 years old, thin as a whisper, her eyes too serious for her age, her confidence brittle from a lifetime of being told to stay quiet and out of the way. His life had been built on patience. Years earlier, when his wife died suddenly, leaving behind medical bills and a child who woke screaming from nightmares, patience had been the only thing that kept him standing. He worked long hours as a maintenance supervisor in a downtown office tower, the kind of man people nodded at but never really saw. Every decision he made passed through one filter first. Would this protect his daughter? Would this keep her safe? Would this give her a chance at a better life than the one he was barely holding together? The billionaire heiress sat at the center table like she belonged there because she did. Everything about her signaled wealth polished into habit. The effortless posture, the restrained smile, the way people leaned toward her without realizing they were doing it. She was young, brilliant, and already legendary in business circles for turning inherited power into something sharper and more feared. Tonight, she was hosting a private dinner for donors and board members, celebrating another successful quarter for her empire and her foundation, the same foundation that had invited the children upstairs. When the art exhibition ended, guests drifted downstairs, and the restaurant filled with soft applause and polite conversation. The single dad had meant to leave quietly, but his daughter's shoelace came undone, and he knelt to fix it, unaware of how close they were to the wrong table, the wrong people, the wrong moment. That was when the child's shoulders stiffened, and her breathing changed. She recognized something before he did, the way children sometimes sense danger without understanding it. Her small fingers dug into his sleeve, and her eyes locked on the woman at the table as if seeing a ghost. The heiress noticed them at the same time. Her gaze flicked toward the child, then back, then returned again with sharp intensity. Color drained from her face, not dramatically, but enough that someone who knew her well would have seen it. She knew that face. She had tried not to, buried it under years of denial and carefully constructed narratives. The child looked like someone she had once been told no longer existed, a life she had erased to survive. For a fraction of a second, her composure slipped, and in that fraction, the truth surfaced. The challenge did not announce itself politely. A well-meaning but careless staff member stepped in, gently suggesting that the area was reserved, that perhaps the man and his child should move along. The daughter shrank instantly, her old fear of being unwanted rising to the surface. The father felt it before he understood it, the familiar heat in his chest, the instinct to shield. He straightened slowly, placed himself between his daughter and the table, and spoke with a calm that came from years of swallowing pride. He stated, evenly and without aggression, that his child was with him, that they belonged exactly where they were standing. That calm shattered something fragile inside the heiress. She stared at the man, then at the child, and the world she had constructed began to buckle. Years ago, she had been young, terrified and cornered by a family legacy that demanded perfection at any cost. A child had not fit into that vision. She had been told the problem would be handled, that the child would be cared for, that forgetting was the kindest option. She had chosen ambition over motherhood, silence over responsibility, and now that choice stood breathing in front of her. The single dad did not know any of this history. All he knew was that his daughter was shaking, that eyes were on them, judging, measuring, and that the room felt suddenly hostile. His struggle was not against the heiress or the staff or the wealth surrounding him. It was against the old voice inside him that said to apologize, to retreat, to teach his daughter that they did not belong in places like this. For once, he refused to listen to it. He stood firm, steady as a wall, and waited. The silence stretched, heavy and unbearable. Guests shifted uncomfortably. The staff hesitated, sensing they were standing on something volatile, and the heiress, used to controlling rooms with a glance, found herself unable to move. The child's eyes never left her face, searching for something she could not name. In that gaze was accusation, longing, and a question that cut deeper than any words could have. Memories crashed in on the heiress without mercy. The hospital room, the signatures, the promises she told herself were true. She had built a billion-dollar empire, funded schools, saved reputations, but she had never once gone looking for the child she left behind. The cost of that choice rose now, demanding payment in public, in front of witnesses, in front of a man whose quiet dignity made her feel smaller than she had ever felt in her life. What changed was not dramatic. There was no confession, no collapse to the floor. Change came in the form of the heiress slowly standing, her movements careful, as if afraid the moment would shatter if she moved too fast. She dismissed the staff with a small gesture, waved away the rules she herself had helped write. For the first time that evening, her power was not something she wielded, but something she surrendered. The single dad felt the tension ease, but he did not relax. He had learned that relief could be temporary, that safety had to be earned again and again. He looked down at his daughter, brushed her hair back gently, and reminded her with his presence that she was not alone. Whatever this woman represented, whatever she wanted, he would face it head-on if it meant protecting the child who trusted him with her entire world. The heiress sat back down, but she did not resume her role as host. She listened instead to the murmur of the room, to the sound of her own heartbeat, to the realization that wealth had never shielded her from consequence. Across from her stood the living proof of her greatest failure, held steady by a man who had stepped into the role she abandoned without complaint or recognition. In the days that followed, the story rippled outward. It did not explode into tabloids or social media scandals. It spread quietly through decisions made behind closed doors. Scholarships were redirected. Investigations reopened. Records were found, truths confirmed. The single dad was called into offices he had never imagined entering, not as a supplicant, but as a parent whose voice mattered. Each meeting tested him, challenged his sense of worth, but each time he remembered that night, remembered standing his ground, and he found the strength to continue. The heiress began to change too, though not in ways easily celebrated. She stepped back from the spotlight, delegated control, and confronted the emptiness she had filled with achievement. She did not ask for forgiveness she knew she had not earned. Instead, she focused on making sure the child had access to every opportunity, every protection, without conditions. It was not redemption, but it was responsibility, taken at last. For the daughter, the world expanded cautiously. Therapy rooms replaced courtrooms, laughter slowly returned, and the fear of being unwanted loosened its grip. She still held her father's hand in crowded places, still looked to him first, because love, once earned honestly, is not easily displaced. He remained her anchor, her proof that family is not always about blood, but about who stays. The final challenge for the single dad came quietly, months later, when he was offered a settlement large enough to change his life in exchange for silence and distance. It was tempting, terrifying, and insulting all at once. He thought of the long nights, the sacrifices, the way his daughter had looked at him when he stood up for her, and he refused. He chose visibility over comfort, truth over ease, teaching his child by example that some things are not for sale. Just before this story ends, I want to ask you something special. Please comment below and share what this story made you feel, or who it reminded you of. Your words matter more than you think. In the end, the restaurant scene became a quiet legend, not because of who froze at the table, but because of who stood without fear. A. Single dad, calm in the storm, choosing dignity when it would have been easier to disappear. And if this story touched your heart, if it made you believe a little more in courage, kindness, and the power of standing up for those who cannot stand alone, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your engagement keeps these stories alive, and your heart is the reason they are told.